So I think Ms. Kim Owen is going to join me in the conversation, possibly Kristen Downs, who's also been working on some of our human resources record keeping and data. So I wanted to, we're going to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about staffing and some of the staffing discussion that's emerged over the past few weeks, and talk a little bit about a conversation that's very important to us as a district. Over the last few weeks, the conversation came up in the Nelson County Gazette and in some other places around staffing turnover. And I think it's really important that as we think about the importance of people in our schools, that we give you more clarity around what that looks like. And the Human Resources team have continued to sort through the data that's been reported in the Department of Education, and also the data that you will see tonight that is our data internally that shares with you the work that's been going on in our schools over the past 4 years. So I'll also say this, I think we've spent a lot of time as a board team and as a community of school leaders thinking about this piece of the puzzle. What's it look like to put people first in our schools? And while that work is messy, we know that it is something that is vital to the future of our schools. So, sorry, I didn't grab the clicker. I bring the conversation back briefly to 2018 when we talked a little bit about the importance of investing in people. And for those of you who are interested, if you go to ncspride.com, you click on Community-Centered Visioning Graph, that's page 31, this is page 49, you're going to see a lot of parallels between what we said in 2018 to what we're going to say today, some 3 years later, and a year and a half of the pandemic. These are all things that we are continuing to really focus on. And I think too, when we talk about putting people first in Nelson County schools, that conversation has also grown because our system has grown around it. But there are 4 pieces that we see that are so important to our work when we think about long-term employee retention and recruitment. And the first one is uniting people around a shared purpose of belief. That's key. You think about the Guthrie Opportunity Center here tonight, people that work here, they do so with purpose. Our schools, people have to come into our schools with a purpose. Additionally, I would say this is something that I think over the last 10 years, as you look at some of the patterns in Nelson County schools, that we have seen inconsistencies with in terms of maintaining consistent school leadership. And we know that sustaining strong school leadership impacts staff and student culture over time, and we want to make sure we're continuing to invest in a leadership succession process. As a board, you committed to consistent principals in all of our schools just 2 years ago. We've committed to backpack leaders just 2 years ago. Those pieces are crucial to building leadership across our schools. The ultimate goal is leaders are coming from within our buildings. That's the ultimate goal. Additionally, I think these 2 pieces at the bottom, we continue to see throughout the pandemic and even before the importance of ensuring staff members are prepared to be successful in the classroom. And I will tell you, with the challenges that we face over the past 16 months, that piece there for being prepared and successful was uniquely complex and something that we know we have to continue to invest in as we come out the other side of the pandemic this summer. Lastly, providing powerful leadership and growth opportunities for every employee is a key piece in allowing our team members to be fully engaged. In fact, this is something that I've continued to come back to over the last 10 to 12 years of my career. These are statements from, I think, one of the most important employee engagement surveys and research across the country, the Break All the Rules Gallup survey. And there are 4 key questions that stand out that we want to continue to focus on in the Nelson County schools. These 4 are seen as the most important part of that conversation. The first one, clarity of expectations. I know what's expected of me. I know why we're here. I know our purpose and priorities and where we're headed to. This is really about empowerment. Do we give our employees an opportunity to do what they do best in our schools? How are we empowering them to lead and do what only they can do? Number 3 over here, it says number 8, it's the question. The purpose of our work makes me feel my job is important. These are statements that came out as most important pieces to employee engagement. And then this last piece, I think we've made a major commitment to over the last 3 years. There is someone in my work who encourages my development. And I think that is a key piece in all of this, is that there are people partnering with people to continue to grow. So here are our commitments that we've made and we continue to make before we go into the conversation around human resources data. We made a commitment to team and one-on-one collaboration with all employees on a bi-weekly and tri-weekly basis. That's key to employee engagement. We've made a commitment to backpack days, summer energy camps for teachers, and teacher externships, which are major resource commitments to people. We continue to invest heavily in what's it look like to have health and wellness practices for not only students, but for our staff. And lastly, we continue to study how can we have salaries that are competitive in this region to ensure that we're not losing some of our most talented to go to other places simply to make money. These are 4 pieces of our puzzle as we look towards the now to build on. Also, I think Ms. Hogan will be able to talk more about this conversation along with Ms. Downs. And there's also been conversation about what makes up our staff. What are the types of certifications that create our current staffing in Nelson County Schools? And I'll hand this off to Ms. Hogan to explain more about certification.
So there have been some questions over the last couple of months about emergency certifications and the number of emergency certifications that Nelson County Schools has as far as employees. And I think that there are a couple things that people need to understand. First, the number of emergency certified employees in the Nelson County School District has gone down over the last couple of years. We have 7 people in the district this year who are emergency certified, and I want to help people understand what that means. To be emergency certified means that you've gone to school, you have a degree, but maybe you're not certified in that particular area of what you're going to be teaching. But it's not like Nelson County Schools can just say, okay, we're going to put you in this job and you're going to be a teacher. That emergency certification has to be approved by the Educational Professional Standards Board. So Nelson County Schools cannot just put someone in the teaching position and say, okay, we're going to emergency certify you and you're okay. They have to fill out background information, share information about their educational experiences and that kind of thing, and they have to be shared with the Educational Professional Standards Board in Frankfurt, and they approve those people to be certified to teach, not Nelson County Schools. We can't make those decisions, they make those decisions for us. Okay? So I'm going to put Kristen up here to help me a little bit with this. So Nelson County Schools, and actually I didn't know this until we started working on this. When I came to work for Nelson County Schools back in July, Mr. Bradley and I talked about what does turnover look like and that kind of thing, and Nelson County Schools did not track turnover. Well, we reached out to other school districts, and surprisingly, if you work in other jobs outside of education, pretty much every business, I think, tracks turnover. But that doesn't happen as much in a school system. I'm not sure why, but it does not happen as much in a school system. So we've been doing a lot of digging over the last 2 weeks. More specifically, Kristen, she's been through a lot of personnel files. She's pulled a lot of data from different systems to try to pull up information so that we can begin tracking turnover, so that we have those numbers for the Nelson County School District. And I'm going to let Kristen kind of talk about what she's done to pull some of the data that we have here, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. You will see some spikes in different places, and then a lot of times you'll see when there's a leadership transition, maybe a change of a principal at a school or something like that, you'll see a spike in a number. So that one thing that we have noticed when there is a change that we do see that. But I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, and she's going to talk a little bit about how she pulled the information and the process that she used.
So just a brief overview of all the numbers that you see in front of you. We have broken up from certified and classified. We have taken retirees out of this data pool because we know that they've left our district on different circumstances. So here we have the annual percent of certified resignations and non-renewals in our district, broken out by school. We have the total number of employees. We did use the number of employees this year as our base number. We know that our number of employees fluctuates very small for each year depending on our enrollment. So just to go off of a basic number that we have easy access to for time requirements, we went off of this year's number. We then used a system called Munis, which is our payroll system. That is our most accurate system in the district to pull this information from 2017, 2018, 2019, and then this current year with some projections in the current year because our contract year is not completely up yet until June the 30th.
So I think the major conflict comes from the Kentucky Department of Education's website. When you look on the website, and Chris can talk more about this, and Kim, because they've talked to Kentucky Department of Education at length over the past week to try to figure out themselves why PE's numbers are different than our numbers. And the short of it is, from what I can discern in our conversations, that the Kentucky Department of Education is using Infinite Campus to determine courses that are being taught and who may be teaching those courses. And they're determining if that same person teaching that course in that course the following year. So essentially, with the data that we have, we can share with you that in every case, the data they provided us is wrong. Not only is it wrong, sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. There's no consistent pattern. And one of the reasons we know that is an issue is because we also add people to course codes that are not traditionally teachers. We also add coaches at many of our schools. For example, if Mr. Dickerson was a coach, we would add him as a class in order to run an eligibility report. We run an eligibility report to determine if those students on that team are going to be able to participate in that athletic event. And to be frank with you, I think if you were to ask people across the state, what's your turnover rate at the Kentucky Department of Education, I would say 95% of them have no idea because the KDE's report on their website is essentially irrelevant to most districts. It's essentially irrelevant because the data they're taking from our school systems are two different things. I say that I think Kim would fully agree with that. So I think that at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I would say that the systems that the Kentucky Department of Education uses and that the local school districts across Kentucky use, there's very little local and state alignment on certain patterns. So we actually, I would say, use Infinite Campus in a more advanced way than most districts because we do run additional reports that allow us to see certain things, even including work-based learning, in order to determine how things are impacted. With that said, the data that they have still doesn't align. I'll explain that looking at this graph. So this is the last 4 years. This will be 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019. This is the current year. This number we expect to go up some over the course of June. That's our current data that we have. This also took out retirement because in 2018, with the pension crisis that existed when everyone thought the governor was going to change the retirement system, the retirement spiked about 4 or 5% that year, meaning that was a year it was a clear impact on the retirement system, which really made this data even more erratic. So what I can tell you is we look at the comparison data from the Kentucky Department of Education, and this year it's higher, and this year it's lower, and this year it's higher, and this year it's not important. I share that with you to say there's no clear pattern in place. We're still working with them to determine why that is, and Infinite Campus as a structure, it's not as easily aligned as we'd like it to be. So there's that. Again, this is our reality of certified turnover over the past 4 years, including this year. I think importantly too, I talked to Jim briefly before the meeting just to make him aware of some of this data, because on the Gazette, these conversations that were published, the guest comments just from a couple weeks ago talked about numbers that I would argue were incorrect by referencing the other information. And I'd say this is the larger challenge we have over the past 6 weeks. While I think staffing, this is going to make us better, this conversation is going to make us better as a district. This conversation is going to make us better as a district. We're growing from these conversations because of that. At the same time, we have to be very careful with misinformation that we're taking out of context, whether that's in the case of the Kentucky Department of Education or our financials or anything else. And I use this as an example. Over my first 2.5 to 3 years as a superintendent in Nelson County Schools, I can count the number of open records requests we had on one hand. Over the past 6 weeks, we've had nearly 60 open record requests. And the impact of that is twofold. People are accessing information that has little context. They don't understand the larger infrastructure behind that information. And when we invite them in to be a part of a conversation, it's not accepted. And I say that also to say this is another example. We know every single employee that makes up this data. We know them in many cases personally. We know their stories. We know why they chose to leave, and our principals really know them. I think in today's world, it's so easy to grab that information, pull it this way or pull it that way, without sitting down to talk about it and have a conversation. So I would say this as well. Going from a handful of open records requests to 58 over the course of just a few weeks is not only completely unfair to our employees, it's completely unfair to the children of the Nelson County Schools. And I don't say that on behalf of the Board of Education, I say it on behalf of myself, who sees the impact on employees around our district that have to listen to information that is often misinformed. So at the end of the day, as a district, we know we have work to do. We know we have room for growth. There's no question about it. And we're committed to continuing to ensure that we recruit and retain great people. And I know that I'm committed, our team, our principals are committed to continue to do that in a way that will be best for our children. So again, this is really an update based on some of that information. I had not shared it with the press. We'll be sharing this information with the press as well. I think one last piece. This information here, it has school level data. And we'll share this with you as well. So this data here, I want us to be very cautious about drawing conclusions. Because in many of these schools, let's take the academy as an example, one employee is 10%. So in 2017, one employee transitioned out of the academy. That's 10%, which is viewed traditionally as healthy rate of turnover. The next year, they had 2 more. It was 3 people that transitioned. It was 27%. That was 2 people. Trying to generalize about a given school, obviously there's a difference between 14% and 50%. Those are differences. There's differences in those numbers. But trying to generalize about New Haven or Foster Heights or Cox's Creek from one year to the next, the sample sizes in some of their schools are so small that 1 or 2 people can impact those numbers. So I just ask us to be cognizant that there's a big difference between Foster Heights with 49 teachers and New Haven with 28, or OKH with 26. Those numbers do look different in each of our schools. So, as a general standard, 100 is a healthy sample size. So I do think it's fair to look at the district number where the average is 346 employees this is fair assessment. But this state over here, we have to be very cautious about drawing generalizations about why this happened, why that happened, why that happened. So that would be my last piece. Any questions, comments?
So, first question I have, back and this isn't for you, Superintendent Brown, exactly. I want to make sure I understand something from Kim or Kristen. So, one thing that, I'm kind of wondering about is the certified staff member, the person who is currently a certified staff member, but maybe they came into the teaching profession through a different route. It is that educator or now current educator that maybe they had a undergraduate degree in chemistry, biology. There's one in my head right now that was a undergraduate degree in the arts and humanities, but then they went back and got a master's in teaching. Would they just fall into that upper left corner? They would not fall into the lower left corner, would they? In the percentages, yes, because it's that person, again, it's that person that maybe they had a 20-year career in, maybe they were working in a chemical lab somewhere. I mean, a brilliant chemist, and then they had that epiphany or that whatever it might be, and they said, you know what, it's time, I want to teach students. And they went back and got a master's in teaching. Would they be considered in that 97% traditional certification?
Yes, if they then had a teaching student,
Okay.
they would be in that 97%.
Okay. Because
If they came back and had a master's in chemistry, they were teaching chemistry, they didn't yet have a teaching certificate, they may have applied to the PSD to be emergency certified while they went through that process.
Okay.
Then they would fall in the
So in my example, where it might be that brilliant chemist working at Dow Chemical or wherever, and they got a master's in that field, maybe they become a teacher, but in that case, you're working on an emergency certification.
Yes.
Okay. So, because I think that helps clarify my head, because I do know that there is more and more, especially over the past, I'll say 5 to 8 years. I know under Governor Bevan, there was a push for what I will call that more non-traditional teaching path, or path to teaching, I should say, where we have people within our communities that maybe have lots of expertise in a particular area, could even be a retired person from a chemistry position or maybe from the military, but because of their experiences and because of now their desire to teach, there was that push. Again, I think it started primarily under the Bevan administration to try and find a way for them to become a certified teacher. And it could be either, it sounds like through, they go back to a master's of teaching, then they are certified, or they say, well, I'm getting emergency certification while I am working towards my master's in teaching.
while I'm studying at practice or while I'm in college in program, finishing whatever classes I have to take to gain my teaching.
Okay, so the point there being is that whenever we hear emergency certification, it doesn't mean that we're just pulling someone off the street and saying, okay, you're going to teach this.
No, the educational professional standards board will have to look at their education and prove that they have the body of knowledge and experience to be able to teach that course. And if they determine that they do not, they would say they are not able to teach in the schools.
And they would not even be eligible for an emergency certification.
And they would not be eligible for emergency certification.
Okay.
EPSD has to look at their background,
that could possibly be a facilities person that maybe runs throughout the
Like
district.
an occupational therapist, a physical therapist that works at multiple schools in the district, and they travel during the day from one school to the other, they might fall in that category.
Okay, and then the CEO, I assume, might go to central office. Okay.
So, yeah, Chris can break it down further for you guys, because we talk back and forth, it's just how they're regulated.
Okay, well, and then that's a great segue into my last question here, because, so it sounds like as you reached out, Kristen, to the Kentucky Department of Education, and trying to figure out where are these numbers coming from, because we can't make them match up to anything we're seeing. It sounds like from what you said that KDE is using Infinite Campus as the authoritative source of data, which I'm going to then use as an example. I'm going to pick on Mr. Dickerson here for a second. So because of the way we use Infinite Campus in our district, maybe Mr. Dickerson or whomever we might want to use as Lulu, we can use Lulu here in this area, maybe as a coach, and we create an instance of that person in Infinite Campus because they're a coach so that we can easily pull eligibility records. But maybe Lulu or Mr. Dixon is only a coach for 1 year for whatever reason. And they were never even what I would classify or describe as a certified teacher in the district or even a classified employee in the district. They were just a coach. The KDE would then see that as being a district turnover person.
So in KDE's report that they run, you have to be attached to a class and have a license number.
Okay.
So a classified professional could then potentially fit that category depending on the situation. But we looked into that exact scenario because our coaching contracts are annual, they're just for a year. And so that would then create a spike in a large number that doesn't necessarily reflect the reality of what it is.
Okay, and so like a teacher who retired, which, and well, we know that we think there was a spike in 2018, I believe it was said potentially we can maybe, associate that with impact on the retirement pension system. A lot of people got oriented out there retire now, not paying on retirement. We've also probably seen a little more of a spike over the past year. I know you heard, I think, from Ms. Marquette, who helped us that there was a spike in retirements there for several reasons. Nothing bad, any particular thing that you say, oh, that's terrible, that you're retiring, is just a personal choice. But in this case, what I'm hearing you also say is that because KDE uses Infinite Campus and looks at people's names attached to classes, that if someone retired, then that was also considered part of turnover in the district. Which I guess you could say that is part of turnover, but it's not part of turnover that someone was fired, let go, decided to leave, someone decided to retire.
They also look at if you move up, so if a teacher takes a leadership position and they move to an assistant principal, or a leadership position in another role, maybe that is turnover as well.
So, the backpack leader at Thomas Nelson High School, who was a teacher before last year, I think, would have been considered to be a turnover.
They would count in that number that
Even though they're still employed there at the same high school. So I guess that helps me. Honestly, I am very surprised that Infinite Campus is being used as an authoritative source there, because in my mind, the authoritative source for employees is based upon getting paid, and that data system is Munis.
And that's why we chose to.
Yeah. Whereas Infinite Campus is the authoritative source for student data, grades, attendance, disciplinary reasons, courses taken, and it's being, somehow someone's doing some fucking math to extrapolate out of that some resemblance to some turnover data.
We are still in the process of meeting to talk through how they created this formula and why it's different from our formula, and just understanding really where it's
Any preliminary, conversation as to why?
So you're not sure, are you sure that's the way they're doing it, or we're just guessing? They sent us the information in emails to tell us how they're pulling that. Kristen and I are working with them to clarify what some of that stuff means that they sent us on how we do it. Okay, so we're not real 100% sure that's exactly how we're doing it, correct? Well, we know what they sent us in writing about how they're doing it. We don't understand the definitions of some of what they're saying. That's what I'm saying. So we're not 100% on
We're 100% on this.
So what we've got is we've got KD saying, here's how we pull the data, but not why.
Yeah.
Why is it that is the process that's being used?
Yes.
Which maybe it sounds like the questions coming up that someone may be asking, why are we doing it this way?
Okay, to me, the point is, well, that may be not correct or what correct. There's two things that I have, not an issue with, that I want clarification. When you are given an emergency certificate to me, which I don't like, that doesn't mean you're qualified to teach that subject for which you're teaching either. Because when I was still in the system, that wasn't necessarily the subject that you were the most, you knew the most of. That's why taking a person emergency certification is supposed to take geography and they end up teaching something else, history, or we try to put them in related fields, and it doesn't work all the time. The other point I want to make is in that 14%, it doesn't make any difference in my eyes. Turnover is a turnover. If you've got coaches out there that are not going to be rehired, we're paying them. That money comes out of Nelson County's pocket. To me, that's a turnover. I don't care if it's a coach, I don't care if it's a teacher, it's a turnover. And we look at what's out there now. I've looked, you all looked, everybody's looked. What is left over to turnover, including coaches. I'm not including student workers because we pay them too. And that technically is a turnover too. I'm just saying, I take issue to that 14% on that page, on that. Take issue on that 14% simply because that money comes out of our money. That comes out of these taxpayers' money. That's what I'm at.
This is just certified that. So these are just certified professionals in the district.
Yeah, but that's not true. What you're telling us though is not a true picture of the turnover rate. It is only on that, like you said, a certified staffing. I have no problem with that. I'm talking about the turnover in Nelson County. That's what I'm concerned about.
So PD doesn't report classified. They don't report certified. And that's why we focus this on the third. We did our own internal classified. So we have our own classified. This doesn't exist anywhere on a state department level. We put it together at all units and making this compliant. Even the number that's emphasized here is even smaller, which makes it even a little bit more erratic when you have 9 people or 7 people, as opposed to the certified. But I think the bigger piece of the puzzle is we agree that people at our schools are the most important resource we have, without question. And we are not satisfied with these numbers. There's no question about that. And we are committed to continuing to put people first through the systems we have in place. And we're not afraid to acknowledge that reality. We're not afraid to talk about that reality. I think you also recognize that we've gone through, education has continued to incur unique challenges over the past decade, and will continue to. And if we think that we're going to serve kids across the state of Kentucky without having opportunities to engage people in different types of roles, this right here, this is Bill Hammond at the airport, who is serving students in a way that no one in our state can serve, right? And that's a reality in the future too. School systems are going to have to continue to find great people and find pathways for them to engage with our students. And I say that because most people are not going to take the traditional pathway to educational certification in 2021 to 2030 in the same way they did in 2001 to 2020. And go back to The Future is Faster Than You Think. We read it 3-4 months ago as a part of our conversation where we looked at the next 30 years, the next 10 years in education. The number one challenge that they said that's going to happen over the next 10 years in education is this. And you're going to have to continue to be more and more creative in recruiting and retaining great people. So I say that to say these things are not bad things inherently. It's all about how it's done and who is those people that you're bringing into your system. So our system, by nature, you look at this place here, the Go Center, by nature, it's going to attract great people to serve our kids that may not be traditionally certified. It's going to, our community has talented people that want to serve kids that may not have gone to school to be an educator. That's our reality, and that's the future that's not going away. We just have to be aware of it.
Okay, another thing, look at that. Now, look at it again, where you get down to, maybe where it says something about development, teacher development. Yeah, prepared and successful, ensure members or provide with growth. You know, when the state cut out those funds, that didn't help. Personal, what are we trying to say?
Professional development.
Professional
Whenever
development.
professional development was zeroed out
Yes.
several years ago.
That hurt too. That hurt too. And I think that has a whole lot that I don't know if we're doing enough, you're doing enough for that, either for teachers. I'm not sure, I haven't made up my mind on that one yet, but I know it hasn't helped.
I'd say doing this is, to be honest, doing this doesn't cost us more money. Doing this is all about commitment. We're committed to these things. They don't cost us extra money. It's just about us valuing them to do.
Well, I don't have a problem with what we're doing, I don't have a problem with the grant that's been, proposed and gone forward. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with, I really don't have a problem, I have concerns with that. When we neglect to give our teachers a more personal growth, professional growth, I think that we as a county, those teachers deserve to have that opportunity, and I don't think we do. I think we do it within the system, but not within somebody else that can come in and help our teachers and help retain our teachers too. I think we have, I want our younger ones to stay with us, and I don't feel like we're giving them enough. Go get them, Hank. I just don't think we're doing it.
So, yeah, I would say, I would agree with you on that. External professional development isn't free. And there is a continued investment our schools are making some of that locally, but it is something that the district has not had as much access to. Yeah, I agree.
Our responsibility is to make sure these people and our citizens of this county teach the best at fullest of their ability.
So something that I would like to see happen, and something all ties to the leadership, the top leader, of course, that would be you as superintendent and administrator, is and have time to performance review, to your performance review, and that is a goal for reducing that turnover rate. So in other words, having a phased plan for how you're going to reduce the turnover and be held accountable for that.
These 4 pieces are a big part of that one. I would also say, especially as you look at a school-to-school variable, different schools are in different places, and you can see that even as you look at the last 4 years. But I would say this too, I understand that turnover rates are important pieces of the puzzle, but we could reduce turnover rates in a lot of the wrong ways, right? We could just simply not allow anybody to move on, and even if they're not doing their job well. I I can do that in a sense if I want the rate to go down. But I think we are trying to offer appropriate supports and challenges to all employees. So we're both supporting them and challenging them to grow. And I would say, I don't disagree with the reality the retention rate is important. We feel that these numbers are too high. And we know we want to continue to strengthen things. But we don't want to do it in the wrong ways. We want to make sure we're supporting principals, supporting teachers in an ongoing growth path.
So then, I think it's a reasonable expectation that we're going to see an action plan kind of created over the next several weeks, meeting that's going to show what the district is going to do to help reduce that amount of turnover. Not only that, but what are we going to do as far as retaining? You know, are we going to start doing stay interviews? If we hear somebody wants to leave us, are we going to do a stay interview with them to find out why? We'll get that.
So thank you, Sabrina. I agree. And I think Kim and I have talked quite a bit about this over the past year. It's been unique and independent, obviously. I think one of the things that's we've missed out on in the past 6 weeks, largely due to the conversations we've been having around the future of middle school design, one of the things we've missed out on is the reality that teachers in Nelson County, employees in Nelson County, showed up since August 10th in person to do that which many educators and educated professionals across the country didn't do. And that's provide for our students in whatever way they needed to together. And so many of our schools and our teachers that really need to be celebrated over the past year, in many ways was grounded out by some of this conversation that we've been having around the future of schools. And whether that's through the news or through guest comments or whatever, we've missed some of that opportunity. And while we've done it internally, we've done it in local schools, I think the public has missed that opportunity to see the power of what our teachers and educator professionals have done across the state. I just want to say that because I do think that's also a powerful thing that the last 16 months has proven teachers in Nelson County and the professionals in Nelson County have shown up at a great time of need for all our students. I don't want us to forget that. Any last comments?
So next up is our guest comments, our guest comment policy. Thank you for attending our Nelson County School Board meeting. Any person wishing to address the board may do so by following these rules. Individuals representing themselves are limited to 3 minutes. Individual representing a group are limited to 5 minutes. Please step forward to your name, address, and if you represent the group, please state the name of the group you're representing. I'm going to do these a little different. And then create a list, and so I'll call individually who has signed up. So first on the list is Matthew Height.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Height, 602 Bloomfield Road here in Bardstown, Kentucky, just representing myself. I'm the proud parent of 3 Thomas Nelson graduates. I'm also a community partner member with you guys. I've had at least 6, maybe 7 Nelson County students come from my office and have given our office a lot. I hope we've given them a lot in return. But I'm really here tonight. I also know being a public servant is no fun. You guys catch a lot of flack. It seems like you get all the negatives and none of the positives. And that can be trying. So I'm here really in a spirit of gratitude for you all here tonight and to say thank you on behalf of our community. It really seems like much of society has gotten so negative. It's not enough to try to put the messenger down anymore. Put the message down. You got to bring the messenger down with it, destroy everything. That's unfortunate, but it's where we are. But I would encourage you guys to remember when this community was looking for a superintendent years ago, all of the community listening sessions that I went to, everyone advocated for change. I didn't hear anybody talking about the status quo, right? And I know Mr. Bradley's brought a position to you guys that he has given a lot of thought to. I know you will give a lot of thought to as well, which is what you're hired to do, is what you're elected to do. So whenever you feel like the negativity is overwhelming the positivity, I would just ask you to remember that there is a quiet group of citizens out there just like me who are very grateful for the service that you're giving, not only our schools, but our community. So, thank you very much.
Next on the list is Jessica Ballard.
Good evening. Good evening again. I've talked to you all a couple times. So I actually have been in conversations with people about the turnover rate and trying to get that information as well, which they said they're going to share information with me tomorrow so I can look at that. I'm an analyst as trained. That's what I do for a living. So I would actually like to look at it in detail. So one, I do highly appreciate Ms. Breeding for actually requesting and suggesting that they have a turnover rate as a benchmark, but be very specific in your definition because you want to make sure that it is 100% accurate. Two, I'm assuming that the Kentucky Department of Education definition is probably looking at infinite campus, and they mentioned that infinite campus plus the license was being used, and I guess that's probably identifying what teachers are actually teaching so they can get a teaching turnover rate. I don't know. I'm not a person who does that. That's what they were talking about earlier today. But I know there's a lot of talk around that. Secondly, I'm going to make a general comment here because this, where we get talked to and then we come up here and we talk to you all, it's not a conversation. It's not working. I think that if we actually have a sit-down conversation that's public, where parents can have a conversation with you all, you can actually answer them at that time that we ask the question, it will be more beneficial for both the community and you. Secondly, lastly, I really would like to know what the actual definition is that you use to calculate your overturn rate. The definition that you use, I know that the state has a specific definition that they calculate for all of the counties, and that's why we use that information because it's supposed to be consistent. So if you could share what your actual definition is, I would really appreciate that.
What was that?
So when you're looking at statistics, a lot of it can be taken out of context. We've talked about that a lot. However, the state has one consistent calculation that has been applied, that has been in, that they've had. I don't know what they've done since they've been campus, but they have a definition that they're supposed to calculate from that is supposed to be looked at annually so you can look at trends. So what I would like to know is how you all are mirroring that definition to make sure it's comparable and to make sure that it's accurate. But I really do think that having a sit-down conversation where parents get to ask questions and have answers, it will be beneficial. Did you hear me? Okay. Anything else? Sorry, it's hard to hear in here. It is hard to hear. And I talk really fast when I get really nervous. So.
You're okay. Next on the list is Jim White.
Slide back up on the turnover. Pardon? I didn't hear you. You can't pull the slide back up. Okay, well that doesn't make it. My point is similar to Jessica's, and that is the state has a definition that goes along with each turnover item, and instead of, if I'm not mistaken, that's overall staff turnover. Teachers, principals, janitors, coaches, all combined. No, the state has a definition for the different turnover rates. I shall make sure we use the same definition when we're doing ours, so we can compare. And the second item is, instead of just the overall rate, can we break the turnover rate down into teacher turnover rate, principal turnover rate, and then non-teaching position turnover rate.
Here, because you're talking about position specific.
I'm sorry.
You're talking about turnover rate position specific.
Well, not position specific, I'm talking about teaching positions, principals, and then kind of non-teaching positions. Now, I think the state kind of breaks it down you can get the definition of how they do it, and if you can do it the same way, that we can have a comparable, something we can compare to the state. That would be my request, just so we look at consistent numbers.